Look, now y'all know I love me some Boosie, but we gotta discuss something. You know I gotta keep it real. So Boosie has been going back and forth online because people are criticizing him for asking Donald Trump for a pardon. And Boosie's response has basically been, "Why y'all mad? I asked Kamala Harris too, and she didn't help me." Then he started implying that maybe she didn't help him because she's racist or people wanted him locked up. But this is where the conversation needs to slow down for a second because facts matter. Kamala Harris does not have the authority to grant presidential pardons. The Constitution gives that power to the President of the United States, not the Vice President, not a senator, not a district attorney, the President. So if someone asks Kamala Harris for a pardon, legally, she cannot grant it. That's not her power. And that's why the argument kind of falls apart, because it's not just that Boosie said he asked Kamala too. The issue is that he's saying she didn't help him and then imply that there's some deeper reason for it, when in reality, she doesn't have the authority to do so in the first place. So now you got people online repeating something that sounds good emotionally, but doesn't actually line up with how the law works. Now, asking Trump for a pardon, that actually makes sense procedurally, because the president is the one who has that power. And to be fair, Trump has used that power before. He pardoned a bunch of people, like Lil Wayne, Kodak Black, near the end of his last presidency. So when something like that happens, of course people feel grateful. If someone helps you get your freedom, you're probably going to feel like you owe them something. But here's where the conversation gets complicated. When someone does something that big for you, sometimes people start feeling like they're forever indebted to that person. And then their loyalty turns into public support, defending them, promoting them, encouraging other people to support them. And sometimes that support goes too far that it starts to look like you're willing to sell out the rest of your community just to show loyalty to that person. And honestly, sometimes that might be the point from the beginning, because in politics, relationships and influence matter. But the people who end up feeling the impact of all that are the fans. Because now you got millions of people who listen to these artists, who admire these artists, who trust these artists. If that artist tells them, this person helped me, so y'all should support them, some people are going to follow that advice without really understanding the bigger picture. And that's where people start saying that folks are voting against their own interests. You've got people telling black women to support a man who has said things that many of them feel are disrespectful or harmful to them. You've got people making political choices based on what their favorite rapper said instead of looking at policies and how these policies affect their everyday lives. And sometimes the very system that helped that rapper personally might also be putting rules in place that negatively affect them and the people that support them. And this is why history matters. Because when people try to erase or water down black history, some folks say that it doesn't matter, but it does matter. Our children learn about strength, resilience, and survival through our history. They learn about people who stood up, who fought through injustice, who built communities even when the system was against them. So when history gets erased or rewritten, it weakens that foundation. And when you understand that history, it also helps you recognize when people are voting against their own interests. Think about it. We have lawmakers arguing about whether people on food stamps should be allowed to buy certain things like a soda/cold drink or a snack. They're worried about somebody buying a cold drink with their benefits. But at the same time, you've got millions of dollars being spent on government contracts, political ads, and all kind of programs that most everyday people would never benefit from. So the focus ends up being policing the small things that poor people do, while massive amounts of money move around at the top with far less scrutiny. And when people see celebrities encouraging voters to support the same political systems that create those kind of policies, that's when people start getting upset with influencers. Because whether someone asks to be looked up to or not, the reality is millions of people are watching them. And like the saying goes, to whom much is given, much is required. When you become a public figure, that responsibility comes with it. People listen to what you say, people repeat what you say, and people sometimes make decisions based on what you say. And look, if somebody wants to accept a pardon or look out for themselves, that's their business. Nobody is saying you shouldn't protect your freedom. But maybe stay out of telling everybody else how they should vote. Because just because you want to move a certain way to benefit yourself doesn't mean everybody else needs to follow that same path. Now, let me be clear about something too. I understand survival. I understand people wanting to save themselves. It's easy for people outside a situation to say what they would do if they were facing prison time. Nobody really knows until they're in that situation. But this is where the bigger cultural conversation comes in. Because for years, we've heard people talk about the code, loyalty, standing tall, never folding. Y'all know what people mean when they talk about the G code? Well, the G code is basically that idea that if you live a certain life or make certain choices, you stand on it. You don't fold. You don't run to the system to save you. You take whatever comes with it. Now, I'm not saying everybody still believes that today. In fact, I think the game has changed a lot. These days, it feels like people will do whatever benefits them in the moment. Clout, money, views, survival. But some people still believe in standing on principles. We've even seen real-life examples of that. Think about Khalif Browder. He refused to plead guilty to something he said he didn't do and spent years in jail fighting it because he believed in standing on the truth. Now, some people look at that and say he should have just taken the deal. Other people say that's someone that's standing on principle. And that's really the deeper question here. Is loyalty still real? Is the code still valid? Or is the code just something people talk about in songs and put on tattoos until real consequences show up? Because it's easy to talk about pride and standing tall when everything is going good. It's different when freedom is on the line. And look, I'm not saying celebrities are required to think about the greater good every time they speak. They're human. They're going to look out for themselves first. But when you have millions of followers, the things you say, it carries weight. And sometimes the people who feel that weight the most are the fans who are listening to you. So, with all that being said, do y'all blame Boosie? Or, what y'all feel about the whole Boosie situation? I like how Turk said, nope, if you want to be a gangster, you got to be a gangster the whole way. Ain't no shortcuts. And I feel that. Now, I'm not no gangster by far, but I do believe in the G code and I do believe in standing on principles. And I do believe that I'd rather stand on my feet than live on my knees. What y'all say?